What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Always Hope podcast, a production of Willwood's Faith and Marriage. This is Dr. Mario Sacasa, and I pray that today is going just amazing for you. Well, welcome back to the show, Sr Josephine Garrett, author of the book Hope and Invitation by OSV Books. Sr Josephine shares her journey of faith, the challenges she faced, her experiences of prayer, and the moments of surrender that she had to make throughout her life. By drawing upon her personal experience, she sheds light onto the power of hope and how it serves as an anchor guiding her and us through difficulties. In today's episode, we also discuss the importance of deciding and committing, and the idea that hardships and darkness can be an invitation by God to grow in a deeper relationship with Him. We also share the dangers of cynicism and warn against endless exploration of our past. And we end this show beautifully by praying the Litany of Waiting, which is just a fantastic prayer if you are struggling with any sense of hope in your life. Well, if you have thoughts on this episode, please join the conversation at Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Leave a rating, write a review, welcome all those things, and let's get into this conversation with Sr Josephine Garrett. Sr Josephine Garrett, welcome to the Always Hope podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Dr. Mario. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure to have you on again. A couple years ago, we had you on the show to talk about, I think we were talking about, are you healthy enough to discern a vocation? Yeah. And we spent a lot of time talking about just kind of what are the things that young people need to be aware of when they're discerning marriage or discerning a dating relationship or discerning a religious vocation, and kind of mental health questions and emotional questions, and kind of when are you going to be ready for that? And so if the listeners are interested in that topic of conversation, please check out that previous episode. But today I'm excited to have you back on the show to talk about your new book. Congratulations. What a gift to be able to take the time to write a book. The book is called Hope and Invitation, published by Our Sunday Visitor. And so grateful to have you on the show to talk about the book. So I guess let's just start right there, Sr Josephine. What inspired you to write a book about hope? I mean, there's lots of virtues, lots of different topics, especially as a therapist who focuses on trauma, a lot of different things you could have focused on. Why settle on that topic of hope?
Yeah, Dr. Mario, whenever I get questions like that, it makes me just become very aware of our American culture. And I live acutely aware that I'm American because I live with 3 Polish women. And so the founder of our order is Polish. And so we have a lot of Polish sisters, and the largest amount of our sisters are in Poland. And like John Paul II, Polish people kind of they don't think linearly like we do quite much. They kind of like go around a thing, and sometimes I'll find myself looking at my sisters and being like, you've said the same thing 4 times. Like, but to them, they've like circled it in a new way. And that how did you come up with this idea? And then to expect first this, then that answer is very American, but that was not my experience. I didn't have this I'm going to write a book about hope now. It was this very mysterious unfolding that actually started with invitations from 2 secular talent agents in New York. Wow. And I was on another podcast, a secular podcast, that I didn't realize how big the podcast was. It was called, I don't know if I could say the name of it. It was called Death, Sex, and Money. And
I saw that actually as I was looking up. That's great. Okay. I was like, that's great that she was on this podcast. This is phenomenal.
I didn't know anything about it. They wrote my provincial superior and asked if they could have me on. My provincial superior thought it would be good evangelization. And so
you can say the word sex on our podcast, by the way, if that's what you're worried about.
And death and money. I didn't know if you wanted to advertise death,
sex, marital money. Intimacy, and money. There,
the marital embrace and money. No. So I went on, and I was just such a delightful woman, and we've stayed in contact over the years. She's a great lady. And I didn't realize how many people listened to that podcast. So I started getting emails from all over the place. Wow. The writer for Criminal Minds sent me like a package and a letter because I mentioned that I loved their show.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
This wild thing. But then these talent agents reached out and they asked if they could be my book agents and if I would write a book with them. And that was too much. I wanted to say no. I let my provincial superior say no for me, because it was just like it's a lot. Like I'm a whole nun, and that's a lot. And so,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they really planted the seed. Like
Mm.
I could write a book, and they were so excited and so respectful, lovely ladies, Heather and Zoe.
Mm.
And I enjoyed getting to know them and answering their questions about religious life because they were pretty, living very, very secularly, distant from any kind of Catholic identity, knowledge of
Wow.
Catholic identity. And so they planted those first seeds, and I need to
Mm.
send Heather and Zoe the book. And so
Yeah.
we said no to them, because I was also approaching preparation for final vows. And so it was like,
Yeah.
it's just
Right.
it's not the right time. And so afterwards, our Sunday visitor approached and asked the same question that those ladies had asked. Would I write a
Mm.
memoir? And I was like, I'm 40 something. Who writes a memoir at 40 something? It's ridiculous. And so I told them I don't feel attracted to anything that would be like a beginning to end memoir,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
because I feel
Mm-hmm.
young for that. And
Mm-hmm.
in general, I don't know. It's not for me. But I was preparing for final vows. And so that also meant it was not the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we
Right.
just tabled that. And when after I made final vows, the folks from our Sunday visitor were there. I just had this really patient, persevering, disciplined editor. And so we began to outline, and we started out with themes of uh, the spousal relationship that God has with his people,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like the signs of that in religious life. And my final vows mystery is a mystery of hope. And I'll tell people if I were a simpler person, my final vows mystery would have just been Our Lady of Hope.
Yeah.
But I like
Yeah.
things complex sometimes. And so my final vows mystery is the spouse of the Holy Spirit. Mary is the spouse of the Holy Spirit,
Mm.
um, who is that's how Mary is like helping to fulfill God's hopes, right? As the Spirit's spouse right now. And so through the work of the Eucharist in us. So my final vows mystery is I'm Sister Mary Josephine of the espoused mother of our Eucharistic King. And so as I was coming out
Wow.
of vows, I was on this reflection of hope.
Mm.
And I knew that OSV wanted me to share stories from my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, let's do that around the theme of hope. And
Mm-hmm.
this hour, one day I woke up at like early, like too early, like 3 or 4 in the morning. And the outline for it just kind of poured out of me. And
That's
I
awesome.
sent the outline to her and was like, how about this? And she was like, that's it.
That's
Kind
it.
of. So it was like probably a 3-year journey from that first
Yeah.
seed to that outline. But that's how we got there.
Yeah, it's incredible. That's
Mhm.
incredible. Now, I do need to ask because the book is a memoir and it's beautiful in terms of just the stories that you do share. Was it hard to write? Was it hard to kind of share some of those stories?
Mm, it's hard to describe. Like hard,
Mm-hmm.
no. Moving and good at times, yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Many of them are stories that it's not my first time to share them.
Right.
And, I am a therapist and I'm also an avid consumer of therapy. And so, there's
Well
like,
said.
yeah. And so I all these things that
I've
come up,
talked about this stuff. I've dealt with these things. Let's just
but,
put it in a
but,
book.
but,
Why not?
but listen, what the Polish people have taught me is that as soon as you say that, you'll be circling that thing another time in a new way, right? And so,
The
so
whole
in a way,
phenomenology thing. Yeah, that's exactly JP2. That's it. You just keep it. You read the theology of the body. You're like, I think he said this already. Let's kind of keep
already,
going.
already, but he's saying it again, and we're
You're
circling it
saying it again.
anew.
Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
So yes, these are most of these stories that are in this book are ones that I've shared many times, reflected on many times, prayed with,
Mm,
you know, just opened my heart before God with these stories many times and let God speak to me. But yeah, there were absolutely moments where I was like sitting in front of the computer crying, but they
oh,
were
mercy.
not tears of like grief or sadness. They were really gratitude for being able to continue to see like my journey with God in a new way. and so to be able to circle it again. And so it was beautiful to write it. And I wrote with my editor. So it's not like I wrote in a
Hmm.
silo. I turned in a
Right.
chapter a month
Yeah.
and we would meet about the chapter. And so in a way, I felt like I was writing to her in
Yeah.
preparation for our meetings. I think so. It was a very relational experience, not just me in front of a computer by myself.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah,
That's beautiful.
it was not easy, but it was lovely. Yeah.
Not easy, but lovely, and
Hmm.
and and I think that's what I appreciate about the book is that you do strike this balance, and sometimes I think the books like this, memoirs, it can be. I think there's always a line of appropriate vulnerability, where
Right.
we're revealing what needs to be revealed, but not trying to make a spectacle of our lives, not trying
Exactly.
to make like a, oh, look at me, type of thing either.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that you anchor it in hope in the story, and so there is the stories of your experiences and your upbringing, but then there's also this catechetical element to it as well in terms of a teaching of what hope is.
Hmm.
And it's beautiful to see that those stories complement for sure, what the teaching is surrounding hope. And so I guess that would be my question here is that, well, then, knowing what you've read, reflecting on how you reflected, being an avid consumer of therapy as you have been, how do you define hope? How do you define hope?
I define hope as like hope is the power that hope is it is power and
Mm,
it's the power that brings the first speck of dawn like into what's absent, into what we long for, like into the tomb. In the book I talk about the power of the tomb. And
mhm,
so I guess I would define hope as like our great power, um, as we are pilgrims, on this earth. Like our great power is hope, um, to help us put one foot in front of the other, to help us choose virtue. All of that is done with a mind of hope. That's
mhm,
one of the readings um, at a mass recently spoke about that. That like we're saved in hope, and that what
mhm,
we accomplish is because we hope.
mhm,
And so this is St. Paul talks about like no one hopes for what they already see. And so
mhm.
as we move forward, it's the power that urges us on. Like we're compelled because we hope. And so yeah, it's the power that cracks the darkness and lets
Yeah,
the
what a
light
great
in.
definition.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so obviously this show you're on right now is the Always Hope podcast. And so
Uh-huh.
this is a theme that I've been reflecting on, and I've given my own lectures on the virtue of hope. And
Sure.
and I love what you said about just like hope is a power. And I think that is a key for people to understand, because in my experience, I find that hope tends to be misunderstood, in
Hmm.
that we often think of hope as this passive thing, like here we are football season and people say, I hope my team wins the Super Bowl. What does that mean? What do? You do nothing. You do nothing to contribute to the well-being of your team, unless you're the coach or the owner or actual player. But me, the average fan, I do nothing to actually contribute to. I have no power over my sports teams of succeeding in any way. But that tends to be the way that we speak about, or even cynically, when people say, "Well, hope isn't a strategy." I've heard comments like that. It's like, well, actually, it is if it's understood appropriately. That hope is this power. In the hope theory, in terms of what psychologists say about hope, is that they define hope as the belief that the future will be better than the present, combined with the belief that I have some power to make it so. And
Hmm.
so there's this notion of the sense of desire, that we can hope and desire for a better future, but we also need to have the pathways and the agency and the capacity to make that happen. And so if I have both this sense of what they say willpower and then way power, this kind of funny term, way power, being able to say, okay, I can do both of these, then I do have this sense of agency. And it's that sense of agency that I really think is crucial to our understanding of what hope actually is.
Hmm.
Because if we don't have that power, we don't have that sense of agency, then that's when we fall back on our heels. That's when we get overwhelmed. That's when we start experiencing burnout. That's when it turns into
Despair.
trauma. That's when
Hmm.
it turns into despair. You got it.
Hmm.
You got
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot to remember. Yeah, and that's why I love our Lady as the model of hope because I mean, she's the antithesis of passivity.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, mm-hmm.
But I think that's the thing, is that sometimes we think that hope is just being passive, or to just be receptive means to be passive, or to just be in relationship with God means to be passive. But that there's this real sense of power, this real sense of agency that the Lord is inviting us to, which is why then hope is a virtue. Because if hope was just something passive, then how could we actually cultivate it? How could it be a firm disposition towards the good? How could it be a cultivated habit that's orienting us towards what's good? That's why hope is a virtue, because it's something that we can absolutely cultivate.
Mm.
So I guess kind of going along this, you in the book, you say this, and this is beautiful, gut-wrenching but beautiful. You say, "I've become convinced that our lives are one long suffering." Well, that's a cheery statement. I mean, what give us a little more context as to what you meant by that.
Should I say that on?
That was page 19.
Yes, very like happy holidays to all.
Yeah, exactly. It is the season of Advent. That's what this is all about. Is that we're
Our
supposed to
lives are
be.
one long surrendering. It's one long surrendering.
I misread it. See, I messed up. I wrote surrendering and I wrote suffering. So I wrote my projection on that. That's my fault. Holy cow. See, it's my projection.
You told no lies. I mean, told no lies.
Mercy, I even wrote surrender. I have surrendering right here. I can show you. It's on my iPad. I wrote surrendering, but I wrote suffering. Oh, mercy.
It
shows you the state of mind I'm in, I guess. That's a Freudian slip.
It's both a long suffering and a one long surrendering. We hate to surrender. It's hard because because of like cultural influence on our perspective on things, like we think surrender means that now I do nothing. But it's like when I surrender, it's like now I'm running ahead,
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's like Habakkuk, like when I surrender, then my feet become swift like hinds in high places. And so but we hold on to our limited human power, right? So we know that virtue gives us the power to be like God. So when we access virtue, cultivate virtue, we get to be like God. We get to do powerful things like God. And God's most powerful act was to die on the cross, right? Like this great power to give life for love, to suffer for love. And so I do think it's one long surrendering of that lie that began in the garden, that we are better fit to do it on our own, so that in that we become like God, And so it can feel ironic that as I surrender, I actually become more powerful, more of an agent in my life, as you might say. So yeah, it's one long suffering surrendering, because we don't want to surrender because we feel like we'll be powerless. But that's the paradox of the gospel, because then we're strong.
Yeah, that is the contradiction. That is the paradox. That is the great mystery, is that when we do surrender to the Lord, we do grow. And it is this balance of saying, okay, Lord, how do I surrender? What are the things you're calling me to surrender in? And again, I think that sometimes we look at these things and we expect that to just be like a passivity, or the sense that, well, if I just surrender, that means I'm just sitting here. But God's inviting us to engage with him also. And that's the mystery, is that it's like, all right, I'm surrendering, my desires, I'm surrendering my hopes, I'm surrendering my longings, I'm surrendering my talents, my capacities. I'm giving them all to you in abandonment, with belief that then you will take them, and that they won't be lost into just some vacuum of nothingness, or that they won't get lost into just the entropy and the mystery of nothingness. And we're not nihilistic in our faith. And so it's that the surrender actually allows us to be able to then grow closer in our unity with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And the hard part is that there are moments in life that invite us to deeper surrender. And I think that's some of the stories that you shared in your experience, that it's like, as you were growing and the challenges that you had in your upbringing, but then even your journey towards your faith and then your journey towards religious life, I get the sense that there was one surrender after another. And there are pointed moments that you talk about beautifully in the book of when you had to kind of make a decision about, what am I going to surrender? And one of those experiences that I appreciated you sharing was this conflict between you growing in your faith and you feeling like you were leaving your culture, and feeling that there was this kind of conflict between the two, that if I'm growing in my Catholic faith, then I'm leaving my Black culture behind, and how the surrender of that, the Lord ends up using that beautifully in ways that were beyond, that just brought harmony to it in a way that you didn't foresee, years ago.
Mm-hmm. And so it's like, um, gosh, what book is it? Is it The Great Divorce, perhaps? I can't remember which one, but I can remember the
You could just say
story.
C.S. Lewis. You don't have to quote
C.S.
the book.
Lewis
You but
book, yeah.
some C.S. Lewis book. That's all it was. Yeah.
Some C.S. Lewis book, I think. And
Oh, you think?
I think, and I've got this memory of a story from the book where ultimately, I think what's going on in this sort of allegory um, is that the person is holding on to something, and I think it's supposed to symbolize lust, but I'm not quite
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
But it
It's a
is. I think it's
lizard, and
yes,
it is the
yes,
great divorce. Yes.
yes, and
Yeah. Yeah.
where he
Yeah.
has to hand it over to God to be glorified,
Yes. Yeah.
and to be brought to its glorified form, and so that, like, having the podcast come out of the book was that experience for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so even when we decided on the podcast, we didn't know what we were going to do. Even
Yeah.
once we thought we knew what we were going to do, it wasn't that. Like, God was slowly revealing it. And so when we were recording that podcast, I mean, I think I cried a bucket of tears probably just at the realization of like what God was doing,
Mm.
because as a fruit of that surrender all those years ago, and
Yeah.
me presuming that I would have to leave culture behind, to be Catholic, but then like being willing to do it because I desired the Eucharist so much, and then God coming back around and saying, "No, I need that part of you too for my glory and for my church." And
Yeah.
thank you for handing it to me for a while so I could do what I need to do with it versus you try to do what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, surrender again, like I was saying, there's a paradox in it because it is a let it go, but we are still like yeah, nothing's wasted with God. Like even
Right.
when I think about having like surrendered my job when I was at the bank,
Mm-hmm.
God in those years, it's like I came out of the novitiate and all of a sudden was taking all the skills I had learned at the bank and was using them to help me flourish in ministry. And those
Mm-hmm.
skills still help me to flourish in ministry. And so God isn't wasteful. So what we surrender, God is the best steward of it, better than us.
Well, I know you shared this in the book, but for folks who don't know the story then, so maybe just give us a little recap of, how you came into your faith, how you became a religious sister, just so folks kind of get the context of what we're talking
Okay.
about.
I grew up Baptist and I attended University of Dallas. When I enrolled, I didn't know that it was Catholic. It was just were nice people. I was like, these people seem nice. Um,
Because you're
and
from the Dallas area, is that right?
I'm from Houston.
You're
So
from
I moved
Houston.
from
Okay.
Houston
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Dallas, yeah,
Yeah.
to go to UD. And then I lived in Rome for a semester and
Mm.
got to encounter Pope John Paul II quite a bit. I was in a Latin liturgical choir in college while being Baptist.
Yeah, that's
And
incredible.
so all of that really shaped me and formed me. So after college, I did have a desire to be a woman of faith, but missed the Mass and missed the Catholic Church. And so I became Catholic. And after 4 years of being Catholic, I was able to return to Rome
Hmm.
and go to confession and, be in Rome and in Italy as a Catholic. And that was kind of like an additional conversion. And so I started to learn to pray, and in learning to pray, was able to encounter God's call to religious life. Um, and so at that point, I had been working in banking for almost a decade, and
Wow.
had been really growing in my career, and had seen myself as this woman who would go on to be this big executive in a bank.
Mhm.
And all that, went away for religious life. Um, and found my sisters through a friend who was discerning with my sisters, and entered the sisters in. So I became Catholic in 2005, and I entered our
Okay.
community in 2011.
Wow.
Yeah, and then made my first vows in 2015, and made my
Hmm.
final vows in it was a COVID wedding in 2020.
COVID wedding.
Yeah.
You're so funny. That's incredible. Well, beautiful story. And so just coming from a Baptist background, and then going to UD, as you said, singing in the Latin choir, going to Rome, just these experiences saying, okay, like there's something more here. And that more is what drew you into.
Mhm.
And I'm sure anytime, like you said, when you're taking those steps of conversion, there is a greater moment of surrender, because it's like, how are people going to respond to this? How are people going to understand this? Am I letting go of some aspect of myself? Am I going to get that aspect of myself back? And that is part of the journey of the spiritual life. And it's a challenge, when we talk about this ongoing surrender. But it is hope. And I think that's why the book centers around that. It's a hope that says, if I let go of this, Lord, I believe that there's something more available to me. And that somehow the letting go of this is part of the pruning process that needs to happen in my life. And it doesn't mean that this was bad in any way. It just means that as I'm being refined and growing, that the better version of myself is going to be developing, throughout our lives. And I think that's part of the journey for all of us, is to not get stuck along the way, And that's the temptation that we all have, is to be like, well, I figured it out. Here it is. Bam. Like I stake my claim. I've got it. Here it is. Here's the kingdom of God. I've got my peace. I've made sense of it. And that's a dangerous place,
That's a
that we
very
can fall
dangerous
into.
place. If that's what you're saying, you need to hold on to something, because it's. But I want to say, for like, as you were talking, Dr. Mario, what stood out to me is I at each uh, pass of surrender,
Mhm.
right, at that crossroad. Um, the theme for me, as I think about it now, was love, and
Mm.
it was like, I have loved this job, but
Mm.
like, I'm growing to love God. This
Mm.
God, I'm coming to know. And so my hope was not to get the job back. My hope was in the love.
Mm. Mm.
Like, and
Mm.
like, and I didn't know what would come of the love. And I didn't know what it would look like on the back end, like trying to grow this in this love of God. And so it wasn't about not knowing if I would get that experience back, or that thing
Right.
back, or whatever. It was more so like not knowing what the outcomes of loving God would be,
Mm.
but
Mm.
still needing to hope in that, in the love, not in what was surrendered. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just been my experience. I don't know, what theologians would say, but I know I can say from my own experience in these 40 something years of my life, and these 12 years of religious life, is that each time I had to really intentionally surrender something, my eyes were not on what I was surrendering. They were on this thing going on with God, and this
Mm.
love,
Mm.
and like, yeah, like saying, I gotta move towards this. And I don't know what that's gonna look like, but I know it will cost me so much more to
Mm.
not move towards that love than it will cost me to let go of this other thing.
Mm. Mm.
Mhm.
Mm.
So
Love, the demands of love. I mean,
yes, yeah. They're sweet
we,
though. They're sweet
they are sweet. They
and
are
sour.
sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sour. No, but it's real, because you mentioned this briefly in the book, and passing, I guess, this conversation you have with a woman who's in an open relationship, in an open marriage. And that's part of the mantra, I guess, of today's day and age, is that we don't know what commitment means. We don't know what firmness means in terms of resolve. And that's driven even by our consumerism. I mean, just think about even the ways that we consume media now. When was the last time you actually bought a CD? Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't even purchase things anymore. When was the last time? Everything is streaming. I'd rather pay for Netflix than to go out and actually buy
I
a
would
cloud.
rather
Exactly.
have a cloud.
Yep, exactly. I'd rather have Apple Music or Spotify so I can stream as much as I want than actually owning CDs or actually owning, the music to be able to listen to. I'd rather have Disney Plus and Netflix and whatever other streaming service and pay monthly for that rather than actually buying, VHS tapes. I remember being a kid, man, we'd go into the closet and we'd have the 20. Do you remember those old VHS Disney tapes? And they were like white and they were like cricky, they were huge. Like, we'd have like a bunch of them, be like, well, which one do we want to watch? And you only had 15 options. That was it, and then you have to actually pick it and make a decision. Now, my boys, they have no idea what that means. I mean, they spend 45 minutes trying to find a movie and they're arguing the whole time because they're trying to go through 5 different platforms to figure out which one actually works. And it's time to go to bed. By the time, exactly. By the time it's over. But all of this is...
There are 2 types of nuns, Dr. Mario. There are 2 types of ways nuns live poverty. One is to get rid of everything, and one is to keep everything. And so directly to my right is an obscene number of VHS tapes. That's just...
And I'm assuming they're not yours. Is that, or they are yours?
No, I am not the latter.
You're not the latter.
If I could clear that shelf right now, I would.
I would.
Yes, but it would bring war into my home. So
yes. Oh, mercy. That is it. But just that we don't know as a culture what it means then to make these decisions, and this is what makes dating so difficult. Life as a whole, it's like we find security now in keeping our options open, rather than in having commitment in one thing. That's a real shift.
Irony. We find security in being afloat rather than being anchored.
Yes.
Which is a complete irony.
It's completely, absolutely. And so everything just maintains a sense of shallowness.
Yes.
And so the ways that this plays out is, young people don't make decisions now. I've talked to people who are in charge of like student affairs at college campuses. It's like, we can advertise things for a week, but everybody says, well, I won't know until the day of, because they're assessing every other option until the last moment. To then say, now I'm actually going to make a commitment in terms of what I want to do. And even when that commitment's made, sometimes it's, well, I'm going to be here for 20 minutes and then I'm going to go to the next thing for 20 minutes. I'm going to go to the next thing for 20 minutes. Yeah. And so we just, as a culture, we've accepted that this shallowness is the things that bring us a sense of peace, or are the things that bring us a sense of security. When it's like, no, like it's inevitable for us to have to make hard decisions in life, and it's inevitable for us to have to. Yes, to be what we have to be. Exactly. Yeah. There's no way. I mean, you can't do it all, and we're not called to do it all either. And so we have to have the capacities to make some decisions and to be focused. And that's why I think it's important for people to practice decision making, practice, just even being able to, when you go out to eat, like, maybe be the first one to choose whatever it is that you want. Be a little assertive on that. Or when you're going out with people and they say, hey, what movie we want to watch? Go ahead and pick the movie rather than just being deferential to what everybody else wants. That's not encouraging you to be a jerk. That's just encouraging you to say it's okay to know how to be able to make decisions, because if you can cultivate that a little bit, then that's going to help you in the long run over the course of your life.
I was traveling with a family recently, and I was born assertive, so I had to dial that back over the years. And so I noticed that, like, we'd get at the table and this like process of like making a decision about what to have was complicated, and then like some were influencing others away from their decisions, and I would look at that menu and I'd say, I'm having this, and I would close it and sit it down and look, and they would be like, well, you don't want it? No, I want it.
I said what I
But
wanted. I'm done.
but like that making a decision, committing to your decision, entering into your decision, even as it's simple as at a meal, like I'm going to receive it, I'm going to enjoy it, I'm not going to look back or look,
Hmm.
um, is tested like
Yeah.
in this culture, like, and so
Yeah.
it's not easy in the culture and the style of living that we're in, to just simply make decisions and enter into them deeply.
Yeah.
So what's coming to my mind is an image of that anchor that draws us deeper, right? Like
Hmm.
draws us down deep into our experience versus like leaving us afloat.
Yeah. And that's why the biblical symbol for hope is the anchor. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
Yeah.
exactly it.
Yeah. To pull us deep down. Mhm.
It pulls us deep down, and it gives us it 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 connects us to something down below.
Mhm.
It's something foundational that we kind of hook onto, that then allows the tides and the turbulence of the world and of life to kind of happen,
Yes.
and it gives us
So
some stability, and some anchoring, for lack of a better word, in that. Hey everybody, this is Dr. Mario Sacasa. I'm taking a quick break from my conversation with Sister Josephine. Encourage you to check out my program, Overcoming Stress and Anxiety. If you find yourself this holiday season just struggling a little bit with some stress or anxiety, or you want to grow a little bit more in an understanding why we experience fear and how we can better manage it, how we can better overcome it, then I encourage you to check out my series. Head on over to goodcatholic.com and you will find the course there, waiting and available for you. And at checkout, please use code SACASA25. You'll get 25% off the course and be able to use it and be able to guide you in your reflections and prayers throughout this Advent season. So, as we're talking about, hope, the way I've kind of conceptualized hope is in a couple ways. It's like we look at hope in that when we're looking, projecting towards the future, trying to make things better, trying to be able to say, okay, what are the things I can do? What needs to be surrendered? What needs to be, what do I need to do to improve my life? And that's beautiful in terms of desires, great questions for vocation, great questions for career, new projects, whatever you have, you're thinking about, moving forward in that regard. But there's also times where hope gets activated when we're down in the doldrums, and that we're in the depths, so to speak, and what we're really just trying to get back to is just kind of a sense of normalcy. And these will be moments where that surrender isn't just a beautiful question that or longing that God kind of calls us to as a choice of love, but sometimes the surrender is, hardships are genuinely befalling us, and we're experiencing burnout in life, or we're experiencing maybe some trauma, or we're experiencing some unforeseen circumstance that is befalling us. And it's hard in those moments to choose hope, because in those moments it becomes very easy to just look at the circumstances and come to the conclusion that it's all bad. It's all a lie, it's all a mess, and we can no longer see the forest for the trees. And those experiences, I've had those experiences for sure in my life, and it's hard. It's hard when the hardship, the subjectivity, the experience, I would say, that's before you becomes the only thing that you see, and you lose sight then of what's beyond. You lose sight of what's beyond the horizon. And in those moments when you're just clouded in your own darkness, it becomes challenging to genuinely choose hope and to believe that hope is a viable option, and to not just succumb to cynicism. St. Augustine says that there are two threats to hope, and one is cynicism, and the other is false hope. And I think these are important for us just to kind of discuss, because cynicism at least makes sense to some degree. I hate to say it that way, because cynicism is at least you're looking at reality as it is, and you recognize that, like, it's hard stuff. And the cynic at least is not living kind of some naive pie in the sky. But cynicism, of course, the temptation is that's the end, like that there's nothing more beyond this. And that's what we're trying to say is a real danger for us to fall into that. But equally dangerous is us falling into these false hopes, or us being naive, or thinking then that if I only do this, or if I only accomplish this, or whatever it is, that it's going to take away all of it. So I guess I'm just sharing, my own experience here and kind of the challenges I've had. But what would you say to people who find themselves in those moments where they can't see the forest for the trees anymore, and they're lost in their own painful subjectivity?
I've had this question. I've had my own experiences like this, and I've had clients in situations like this. And I would say, like, what I offer to clients is, to simplify. I think sometimes when we get in those situations, and I'm really right now thinking of people who are living their faith but find themselves like surrounded in
Yes.
hardship and darkness.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's who my mind is on right now. And what I'll
Me
find
too. Me
oftentimes
too.
with those folks is there's this tremendous guilt, right? Like, why
Mm.
pray? What difference does it make? Look where it's gotten me thus far.
Mm.
Um, and so in that case, even the simplest of prayers, like I've told clients before, get rid of the words and just pick up an image and look upon it,
Mm-hmm.
just get very simple. Um, but I think folks in that position um, are incredibly courageous, um, great gifts to the church, and truly a gift to the church, even in like the simplest prayer that's uttered as they're sitting surrounded in this darkness. Um, I think it's St. John of the Cross. He said, when the night is dark, it's not because God is far off, but it's because the light has come so close, it's darkened our
Mm-hmm.
vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not in those words, his words are
Mm-hmm.
better. But, um, and so, no, but I feel like those kind of Catholics who are surrounded in suffering, surrounded in darkness, growing weary, in their prayer practices, growing weary in their religious efforts. That's a brink. It's not a it's not a moving away from the death of the faith. I think it's approaching a brink in the faith. And so in that case, they're a great witness and gift in the church. I don't know what else to say about that.
Mm.
And I know that's not what they would want to hear. I know it's not what they would want to hear. They don't want to be that kind of gift.
No.
Um, but surely clients I've sat across from in that position were a gift and an inspiration to me in the simplest of their efforts and prayers. Like,
Mm.
the tiniest step forward they were taking felt like a leap in the spiritual life. And so I don't know what else to say about that. But just cynicism, I mean, that is what it is. Cynicism does seem would be to fit with sarcasm. Like it's like the expression of, I guess the way I would say it, like the expression of tough emotions without courage. So
Tough emotions without courage. What do you mean by that?
for example, it helps me to tell stories. Like when I feel angry, we know anger is a secondary emotion. Underneath it are other emotions. And so I can express that anger towards sister by being sarcastic and giving her the silent treatment. And I have not
Mm-hmm.
yet found courage, or I can go to her and
Mm-hmm.
shed the sarcasm and the shields and convey to her what's actually going on in my emotional world and my experiences with her. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
kind of takes more courage and vulnerability. And so I think like cynicism is waiting to meet courage. Right. It's difficult emotions waiting to find their courage,
Mm-hmm.
um, to be in the world in a sincere way. Um, what I would also want to say to those who are suffering is the reason I feel like it's a brink is because like suffering greatly, like surrounded by it. The reason I feel like it's a brink is because like any suffering in the world can now be placed in the tomb with Christ and experience the resurrection. And
Mm-hmm.
so those who are suffering greatly like have this access to the power of the resurrection um, in their experience. And so, but again, none of that. none of that is consoling,
Hmm.
necessarily to those who are surrounded. But I
Yeah.
guess I would just want them to know, like I said before, that they are a great gift to the church and a
Yeah.
great gift to the coming of the kingdom.
Yeah. You ever prayed with the Book of Job before? You ever actually read the
I
Book of Job?
have,
And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So when I was going through kind of I've had a couple kind of major crises of faith moments in my life,
Hmm.
and I was kind of going through my first one. Friends of mine were like, "Hey, read the Book of Job," and so I was reading the Book of Job, and it starts like the celestial dinner party. God's like bragging about Job and talking about how good he is, and then Satan kind of shows up. He's like, he's only good because you're so good to him. Let me have
Hmm.
him for a little bit, and so this is when the bargain kind of happens. And so then next scene we see Job, great guy, faithful, and then all the bad things happen immediately. Loses his wife, loses his kids. Boils everything, but death. And so I'm sitting there, I'm reading this thing, and expecting to find some consolation. and, and the Book of Job is not actually the most consoling book to read
No,
when you're.
as soon as you
Yeah,
said your friends recommended it, I was like, you gotta get new friends.
yeah, I know. I need to get new friends. Well, this is also like my brother when I was when I was a kid. We watched Terminator 2 when I was like 10, and has this great scene of nuclear warheads going off, destroying the whole planet as like the robots are taking over. And my brother who's 2 years older than me was like, that's not how the world's gonna end. Read the Book of Revelation. Well, the Book of Revelation didn't bring me any consolation as an 11-year-old. I can tell you that much.
But you were informed.
But I was informed, yes, about dragons and with diadems and the whole bit. So, but the Book of Job, going back to this, so the story goes, for people who don't know, there's this beautiful kind of back and forth between Job and his friends. And his friends are basically trying to get Job to admit that he's done something wrong. It's like,
Mm.
clearly, all these bad things have happened to you because you've done something wrong. So if you just admit what it is that you did, then everything will be fine. And Job's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I promise. Like I've been faithful. I've kept to the commandments. I've been generous with my tithing. I've done everything by the book. I've done nothing wrong. I maintain my innocence. And that's the place where a lot of us do feel that, especially as Catholics, and we think it's like, okay, I'm praying, I'm going to church, I'm trying to live by the church's teachings. Lord, throw me a freaking bone, help
Yeah,
me out a little bit.
yeah.
I'm trying to uphold my side. And so it's kind of like, where's your side a little bit? So God shows up at the end, finally, after this long back and forth with his friends, and then this other guy kind of shows up. And anyways, God finally shows up at the end of the book, and I'm reading this thing, and I'm like expecting, I'm like, all right, here it is. God's going to tell him, listen, I love you. I had this celestial dinner party, and I made this bargain, and God's just going to explain everything to Job about why it happened the way it happened, and I'm this is my own projection expectation that this is what's going to happen. And then God starts by saying, well, you have questions for me. Let me ask, I have questions for you. And then he starts going, were you there when I
Mm.
separated the night, the light of the night from the light of the day? Were you there when I separated the waters from the heavens to the waters of the earth? Were you there when I created the creepy crawly things? Were you there when I put the birds in the air? Were you there when I put all the stars in the sky? And he just goes through the whole story of creation,
Mm.
asking Job, were you there? And of course, Job's answer is no. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And the first time I read this, I'll tell you, Sister Josephine, the first time I read this, and I was kind of in this state of kind of like frustration, I took my Bible and I threw it across the room. I was like, that's not the answer. that's not what I wanted to hear right now.
Hmm.
And just felt that like it was at the time, I felt like it was almost like God's like being pejorative and like demeaning. It's like, oh, well, isn't it cute? Like,
Sit
here
down
it
and be
is.
quiet.
Yeah, sit down
Yeah,
and be quiet.
yeah.
Exactly. Know your place type of thing. And so then I felt that for a while. And then as I kind of reflected on that and prayed with it and kind of massaged that over the years and went back to the story and kind of reread it with the new lens as I kind of worked through that period of my life, what I realized is that it isn't God being pejorative or putting Job in his place, so to speak, but rather it's an invitation to remind Job that he is not God, and to remind Job that, listen, maybe I put all these things together up there. Maybe, since I'm the one who kind of knows all this stuff, maybe I know what I'm doing here too. And I think that's the wisdom of the story of Job, is that for us to be able to say, I'm in this moment, and like the U2 song, I'm stuck in this moment, and I'm here right now. And what I need is to be able to see that there's something more that's present. And that's where the Lord steps in. And that's where the Lord reminds us, is to be able to say, I have all of time and eternity in my memory. I have all of creation within my own heart. Every multiverse version of you, if we want to believe in any of that, like I got it. It's here and right here. I'm right here. I got it all. I got it all. I got it all. I got it all.
And because I've got it all, like this particular suffering, this particular experience is wrapped in the loving will of God.
Yes.
Like it's captured in the overall, which means, like, for the cynic would say it has the final say. But because it's wrapped in the will of God, whether that's permissive or active, the final say is always Christ and the resurrection, period, always. So.
Period. And it's hard for us to believe that in those moments.
Yes.
But that's where the invitation is.
Yeah.
That's where the surrender is. That's the act of surrender, is that, Lord, I know there's a lot going on right now. And I know there's a lot that's going on right now also. And so give me the grace to be able to have this trust and to find the steps that I need to take to be able to make some sense of this chaos that I'm going through, and to be able to have some sense of agency, even if it's as small as you said. Even the tiniest step that we take is something. The tiniest prayer that we make is something. The tiniest movement that we take towards a better step is something. And those things are not insignificant, and they're not nothing. And that's what I would tell people, is that it's not nothing. And so the little steps that you take are absolutely important in the midst of all the struggles that you're going through. Well, I would say this. Okay, so I do want to kind of go back to the book here if I can. For me, I would say one of my favorite parts of the book is near the end. In chapter 8, you do this wonderful job here, kind of when you've been talking throughout the book, you've been sharing about your own experiences here on the podcast today. Beautifully, you shared just about your own conversion story, but in the book, you do share beautifully about your upbringing and your parents' divorce and your dad's suicide and being raised by your aunt and uncle. And so there's a lot there that I want to encourage people to read and to pray with, and I know we're just kind of throwing this out there kind of in passing. Hey, so let's just talk about all that real quick, but the reason I'm bringing it up is in this context, is that you say this and it's kind of a lengthy, I'm going to summarize here. This is page 104. You're kind of summarizing kind of the process of therapy, where you're kind of exploring your past and exploring your memories and exploring those experiences that you've had, those wounds that you've had, but then recognizing that there comes a point where where even the exploration could be its own mask, where even the digging could be its own distraction, and that there comes a point in all of our journeys where we have to say, okay, I've understood enough, and I need to just have acceptance. And the word that you use is just, I can accept that I was abandoned. I can accept that abandonment was part of my story, and I don't need to keep digging to go and understand any more about it, but just to be able to come to that level of acceptance that this is part of my story is really powerful and beautiful, because I find that there's some therapies, some modalities out there, and I've talked about this in the podcast, some of my concerns with some of this inner healing prayer stuff that's kind of circulating in our church today. And I think it ends up festering. It doesn't have that balance where it's like, there's appropriate to go into the past, but at some point we have to be able to come to a place where we've said, I've seen enough, I've dug enough, and now I need to move forward. And the moving forward piece is an element that I think sometimes isn't discussed enough. And so I'm really happy that you did talk about it beautifully in the book. And then where it leads you is this, and this story is just really spectacular. You say that you get to this point, and if I can just read it, I'll read it. It says, one night I decided to call my oldest brother and ask him if there was anything I didn't know, more that had happened to us that I did not remember. I stooped down further into the tomb, and I will never forget the conversation and what I found there when I stooped down and went in and looked closer. And it was a litany of love. Your brother then says to you, he says, Tony, which was your I guess baptismal name before your non-religious name. Tony, what I remember and what I want you to remember is that you were and have always been so loved. That's awesome. That all the hardships, and I really, I mean, it's just like I have it highlighted. It's beautiful when you talk about all the hardships you experience, all the suffering that you went through, that it's easy then to think that the narrative is, well, there's something wrong, there's something broken, there's something more, there's more digging that I have to do, there's more unpacking that I have to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And your brother just being gentle and loving and just saying, you were loved. I mean, that's the story of your life, that you were loved.
Amen.
That's the story of your life.
Yeah. And I just want to speak to that. He was such a gift to me in that moment. And I told him, he loves that the book ends with him.
I bet he does.
But just really a tremendous gift so that I would not get caught in that snare, because I want to speak into that for a minute. Like these ministries, I understand, I understand that these ministries are well-meaning, but we sometimes are far, far too ready and too well equipped to enumerate our wounds and our brokenness, but are rendered silent when it comes time to render the evidence of love in our life. And the absolute
preach it. Come on, sister.
Presence of God's love. And so, yes, we absolutely need to know what needs to be handed to God. I can't hand God a wound if I can't name it, right? I got to know what I need to hand to him to work on. Right. But I just challenge us to at least apply the same energy to discerning the loving presence of God in all of the ordinary, profound moments of our lives, so that we understand this constant press of God's love in the midst of this. I just want us to be people who can enumerate that as well, quite well. And so the image that's been coming up in my prayer lately about that is that sometimes we're looking for God as if God is a small treasure hidden in a corner in the house. But we look for God the way we would try to perceive the water around us in a pool. And that's that just should perceive that that we are sunk down into this. And so, I sincerely challenge those ministries who leave people sitting in a constant digging and searching into their brokenness. I challenge them to at least equip people to be heat-seeking missiles for an awareness of the love of God in their lives as well.
That's right. Because it forces us then to actually, like I said, move forward as well, and to recognize the totality of our experiences, that we are loved. And listen, we could talk about all the science, here, we have a negativity bias where we want to focus on things, and we also have groupthink. And so we're in group settings, that are promoting certain ideas or thoughts, then we're just naturally going to gravitate, to want to start looking at all that stuff. And I'm not dismissing and saying that people don't have hardships. Of course we have hardships.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely we have hardships. And those hardships, especially in our childhood, certainly affect our neurological makeup and how we assess for stress and threats. And I mean, that's a whole nother episode that I've done and will continue to talk about. But my concern is exactly that when we get stuck in this moment. And I love what you said, we get stuck psychologically, but then even spiritually, we think that somehow if I keep digging, that somehow there's that secret kind of experience. It's kind of, he's somewhere locked underneath in this whole thing, and have to kind of keep opening chambers and opening kind of locks and doors and kind of keep going down further and further and further. And if I can just kind of get to where it is and I can find it, all the while forgetting that he's right here, all the while forgetting that he is staring at us in the face and wrapping us, as we said earlier, in his love, in his providence, in his will, and whatever the experiences are that we've had in our life. If we say that that's the final end, then we're missing the point that the final end is not just a hardship, but rather that we are enveloped in love and that God is present with us. And that's something that we need to believe and adhere to spiritually, certainly theologically, but then also in our memories, in our psychology, in our makeup, because life moves on. We have to move forward. And so we that's what hope is. And that's getting back onto the adventure of life, back into the mystery of God's unfolding plan and purpose and experience for us. And we have to do that. Yeah. And so I agree that I think sometimes these ministries, we promote, it almost, to me, what concerns me is it almost promotes this sort of victim mentality, as if the victim is the final say, rather than assessing and saying, like there's something more. And we should have the capacity to be able to look and to attend to what our experiences are, but then be able to say, okay, how do I take this and how do I apply this to my life now? And then be able to continue
Run
moving
ahead.
forward,
Yeah, run
and
ahead.
continue
Yeah.
moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I appreciate you sharing that in the book for sure. Well, Sister Josephine, it's been a wonderful time chatting with you today. You have something that I would love for us to end with, and we talked about this before. And since here we are kind of in the season of Advent, you recently wrote this beautiful litany that maybe you can just share with us a little bit what the litany is. And again, maybe what inspired you. Again, I'm not trying to be too American with my question here, but I'll just.
I was working with two priests on an Advent program, and each of us had a part that was ours to reflect on, and we each had to choose a prayer to close with. And so the week of Advent that I had was the weekend where it gets hard, to hold on to the waiting. Things get
Right.
busy and it gets hard to love waiting. And waiting is something I think we've got to learn to love. And so actually the idea to write it came from counseling skills to help, like, I thought, what is a prayer that could ground the folks participating in the Advent program in the present moment, to ground them in the love of waiting? And litanies are very grounding, because they're repetitive. So they help us be present in the present moment. And so then it was like, okay, let's write a litany of waiting.
That's
And I
awesome.
had a lot of help with it. It wasn't me writing by myself. But so yeah, I like what it turned out to be very much. So would you like to pray it?
Let's pray it.
Okay. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. From the fear of waiting, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of uncertainty, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of failure, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of change, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that your promises will not come true, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that my suffering has no meaning, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that my suffering will not bear fruit, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of my weaknesses, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that your grace will not be sufficient, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that your will is not for my good, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that your plans will not fulfill the desires of my heart, deliver me, Jesus. From the belief that I wait alone, deliver me, Jesus. From the belief that I am waiting because I have done something wrong, deliver me, Jesus. From the belief that I will wait forever without resolution, deliver me, Jesus. From the belief that I am waiting because you will never respond, deliver me, Jesus. From the belief that you have abandoned me in my waiting, deliver me, Jesus. From the taunt of temptation and discouragement that whisper to me when I am waiting, deliver me, Jesus. When it is hard to wait joyfully, Jesus, I will wait with you. When my prayers seem unanswered, Jesus, I will wait with you. When my struggles are overwhelming, Jesus, I will wait with you. In my joys, Jesus, I will wait with you. In my sorrows, Jesus, I will wait with you. In the ordinary events of daily life, Jesus, I will wait with you. In times of celebration, Jesus, I will wait with you. When I feel stuck, Jesus, I will wait with you. When discerning big decisions, Jesus, I will wait with you. When I am tired, Jesus, I will wait with you. When I am sick, Jesus, I will wait with you. When I am uncertain, Jesus, I will wait with you. When no one else will wait with me, Jesus, I will wait with you. Throughout the pilgrimage of my life, Jesus, I will wait with you. Son of God, Emmanuel, you are my hope. In all circumstances, help me to wait with you, on you, in you, and through you. Amen.
Amen. Father, Son,
Holy Spirit. Amen.
Beautiful. Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
It's just beautiful, beautiful prayer. Really appreciate you sharing that with us today, and just your comments and everything that you offered. So if people are interested in getting the book or listening to the podcast, how can they do it?
The book is on our Sunday Visitors website as well as Amazon, and the podcast is available everywhere. It's called Hope Stories with Black Catholics. So our first season series is with Black Catholics, and they're all telling their beautiful stories of faith. And then we're discerning a second series, and we'll see what that topic will be. It'll still be Hope Stories, but with a different group of folks, maybe folks recovering from addiction or who've experienced infertility. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what the Lord wants.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sister Josephine, for coming on the podcast. Always a gift having you. Anytime you want to come back on, there's an open mic ready for you.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
All right, everybody. Well, that does it for my conversation with Sister Josephine. Just incredibly grateful for her time and her wisdom that she offers throughout this show. And again, just that final prayer, the Litany of Waiting. Encourage you that if you are struggling this Advent season, to be able to just rewind that part of the episode, listen to it again, or you can find that Litany of Waiting online and be able to pray with it. And I just hope that this episode has given you a lot of fodder for reflection for you during this Advent season as we continue to journey in this season of hope. So many blessings to all of you. God bless you. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day.